My name is Robert Hayes, and I'm 41 years old. For 20 years, I've been laying concrete foundations for other men's dreams, watching skyscrapers and shopping centers rise from the ground, while my own hands stayed calloused and my back stayed bent. There's honor in that kind of work, the kind that leaves something permanent behind when you're gone. Or at least, that's what I used to tell myself when I came home covered in dust to a woman who once looked at me like I hung the moon. I met Angela at the Safeway on Meridian Street when I was 21 and she was 20. She was working the express checkout with a smile that could melt steel beams. I was buying a six-pack after a 12-hour shift, looking like hell warmed over, and she still gave me her number written on the back of my receipt. "Call me," she'd said with this little laugh that made my chest tight. "I get off at 9. Those early years were golden. We'd sit on the fire escape of her studio apartment, drinking cheap wine and planning our future like we had all the time. In the world. She wanted to be somebody, not famous, just somebody who mattered, who had nice things and went nice places. I promised her I'd build us a life worth living, brick by brick if I had to. She'd kiss me then, tasting like Moscato and dreams, and I believed we could do anything together. We got married at the courthouse on a Thursday afternoon, 2 years after we met. Angela wore a white sundress from Target that she'd saved up for, and I wore my father's suit that pulled tight across my shoulders. Our honeymoon was a weekend at a motel near the coast, eating takeout Chinese on a queen bed while watching the sunset through thin curtains. She said it was perfect, said I was perfect, said our life would be perfect. The first house we bought was a fixer-upper in a neighborhood where gunshots weren't uncommon, but the price was right. I spent every weekend for 2 years renovating that place. New drywall, new floors, new everything. Angela would bring me sandwiches and sit on a paint bucket, talking about her day at the office where she'd started as a receptionist. She had ambitions, my Angela, always reaching for something better. But somewhere around year 10, the reaching became grasping. She started noticing things. How Linda from her book club had a new Lexus. How her sister's husband took her to Cabo twice a year. How the other wives at company functions wore designer labels while she shopped at Ross. "I'm not complaining," she'd say, which meant she was absolutely complaining. "I just think we could be doing better." Greg Thompson entered our lives at a 4th of July barbecue 5 years ago. My boss, technically, though he spent more time in air-conditioned offices than on job sites. Tall, silver at the temples, the kind of man who looked good in a suit or jeans, who could quote stock prices and wine vintages with equal confidence. Angela's eyes followed him around that party like he was magnetized. "Now that's a successful man," she said that night, undressing with her back to me. "Did you see his watch? That's a Rolex, Robert, a real one." I told her I didn't need a Rolex to know what time it was. She laughed, but it wasn't the warm laugh from the Safeway. This one had edges. The changes came gradually. She started going to the gym, buying face creams that cost more than our weekly groceries, getting her hair done at salons instead of supercuts. When I mentioned the credit card bills, she'd wave me off. "I'm investing in myself, Robert," she'd say dismissively. "Maybe you should try it sometime." I'd look at myself in the bathroom mirror after she said things like that. Saw the crow's feet, the gray creeping into my beard, the way my shoulders slumped after carrying the world on them for 2 decades. But I also saw the man who'd loved her since she was 20, who'd built her a house with these hands, who'd never missed an anniversary or forgotten her favorite flowers were yellow roses. That night, as Angela turned away from me in bed, I heard her phone buzz with a message. She grabbed it immediately, her face illuminated by the screen, and for the first time in 20 years, she smiled in a way that had nothing to do with me. The changes accelerated after that company barbecue. Angela started having meetings that ran late, always with perfectly reasonable explanations that felt rehearsed. "Budget reviews," she'd say, kicking off her heels at 10:30 at night. "You know how Greg is about the quarterly reports." I knew how Greg was, all right. Smooth. As aged whiskey with a laugh that made you feel like you were in on some secret joke. He'd stop by job sites occasionally, clapping me on the back with manicured hands, asking about the missus, with a smile that never quite reached his eyes. Angela's criticisms became sharper, more frequent. She'd watch me eat dinner and sigh. "Oh, you have to chew so loud?" she'd ask with irritation. "Greg says table manners are a sign of breeding." Or she'd see me getting dressed for work and shake her head. "Those jeans make you look homeless," she'd complain. "Why can't you dress like a real professional?" "I work construction," I'd remind her. "You want me laying foundation in a three-piece suit?" "I want you to have some ambition," she'd snap back. "Some men actually try to improve themselves instead of staying stuck in the same dead-end job for 20 years. The irony was, I'd been promoted twice in the last 3 years. Crew supervisor, then site manager. Good money, better benefits. But it wasn't corner office money. It wasn't Rolex money. It wasn't Greg money. She started missing things. My nephew's wedding, my mother's birthday dinner, our own anniversary. When I mentioned our anniversary, she'd respond with, "Oh, was that today?" As if 20 years meant nothing. But she never missed a company function, a team-building retreat, or a girls' night that left her stumbling in at 2 in the morning, smelling like cologne I didn't wear. I suggested a weekend getaway, just the two of us. Maybe drive up the coast, find a little bed and breakfast, try to remember why we fell in love in the first place. She actually laughed, not cruelly, which would have been better, but dismissively, like I'd suggested we take up competitive yodeling. "I can't just drop everything because you're feeling needy, Robert," she replied coldly. "Some of us have careers to think about." The loneliest part wasn't sleeping next to someone who'd become a stranger. It was the moments when she'd forget to be cruel. When the old Angela would surface briefly, laughing at something on TV, humming while she cooked, reaching for my hand in her sleep, only to snap back into this bitter stranger who looked at me like I was something stuck to her shoe. I started paying attention to details I'd previously ignored. The new lingerie that appeared in her drawer, price tags removed but obviously expensive. The way she'd take phone calls in the bathroom with the water running. The credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to. Always lunch. Always 4. 2. "Who'd you have lunch with at Chez Laurent?" I asked one evening, studying the visa bill. "Work thing," she said without looking up from her phone. "Greg needed to discuss my performance review." $60 for lunch seems steep for a performance review, I replied. She looked at me then, really looked at me, with this cold calculation in her eyes. "Maybe if you understood how real business works, you'd know that's perfectly normal," she said with disdain. "But you wouldn't, would you? Because you're content being exactly what you've always been, mediocre." That word hung between us like a blade. Mediocre. 20 years of loving her, providing for her, building a life with her, reduced to that single surgical cut. I found myself driving past her office some nights when she claimed to be working. Late. Her car would be there, sure enough, parked right next to Greg's BMW. The office windows dark except for a single light on the executive floor. I'd sit in my truck, imagination running wild, telling myself I was paranoid, that I was becoming one of those pathetic men who couldn't trust their wives. Then came the night she announced she had a special project with Greg, something about restructuring the Detroit accounts. When I offered to bring her dinner, Chinese from the place she loved, just like our early days, her reaction was volcanic. "Don't you dare show up at my work," she screamed, actually standing up with fists clenched. "Don't you ever, ever come to my office without permission. Do you understand me?" The way she said those words wasn't the voice of a wife protecting her professional image. It was the voice of a woman protecting her secrets. And for the first time in 20 years, I stopped believing her. The Carlson job wrapped up 3 hours early on a Friday. The boys wanted to grab beers, celebrate finishing ahead of schedule for once, but I begged off. Thought I'd surprise Angela, maybe take her to that Italian place she'd been hinting about. I even stopped at the florist, got those yellow roses she loved, though they cost $30 for a dozen now. Our house was quiet when I pulled up, but her car was in the driveway. Greg's BMW was parked across the street, like he thought that made it less obvious. My hands started shaking as I grabbed the roses and the takeout bags from Marcello's. Her favorite chicken marsala, extra mushrooms, the way she'd ordered it. On our 5th anniversary, I could hear them before I even reached the stairs. Angela's laughter, bright and genuine in a way it hadn't been with me in years. Greg's deeper chuckle underneath it, confident and satisfied. The sound of my bed springs, the bed I'd assembled myself, in the room I'd painted her favorite shade, of blue, creaking in a rhythm that made my stomach turn to acid. But I made myself climb those stairs, each step deliberate and silent. I needed to know. Not just the fact of it, but the depth of it. How long? How much contempt? How thoroughly I'd been played for a fool. Their voices became clearer as I approached the door, left carelessly ajar. Angela was talking, breathless, but articulate, and what she said next carved out whatever was left of my heart. "God, you have no idea what it's like living with him," she said between gasps. "He's nothing but a neutered dog, loyal, boring, and too weak to ever fight back. He thinks love is enough, like we're still 20 and poor. He'll keep working himself to death while I get what I actually deserve." Greg's response was a knife twist. "The pathetic devotion is almost admirable. The way he looks at you at company, events, like you're still his precious angel. Meanwhile, I've been f***ing his wife in his own bed for 8 months, and he's too stupid to notice." They laughed then, together, and the sound broke something fundamental inside me. They went on, trading observations about my inadequacies like comedians workshopping material, my dad bod, my complete lack of ambition, the way I still brought her flowers like it was 1950, how I actually believed her excuses, swallowed every lie because I trusted her. "Remember when he suggested that weekend getaway?" Angela giggled with cruel amusement. "Like I'd waste a weekend in some dusty cabin when I could be here with you." "The best part," Greg replied with satisfaction, "is that he'll never do anything about it, even if he found out. He's the type who'd forgive you, try to work it out. Probably blame himself for not being man enough to keep you satisfied." I stood there in my own hallway, listening to 20 years of marriage reduced to a punchline. Every sacrifice, every act of love, every moment I'd thought we were building something together, all of it reframed as weakness, stupidity, something, to mock over post-coital champagne. Quietly, carefully, I pulled out my phone, opened the camera app, switched to video, and eased the door open another few inches. I filmed them there, tangled in sheets I'd washed, Angela wearing the negligee I'd bought her last Valentine's Day. I captured their cruel laughter, their casual dissection of my character, the way they toasted with wine glasses to "poor oblivious." Robert. I filmed for 12 minutes before backing away, silent as smoke. Downstairs, I set the roses on the kitchen counter, put the takeout in the refrigerator, habits die hard, even when your world is ending, and walked out to my garage. The workshop I'd built was my sanctuary, the one place Angela never entered because it was dirty and depressing. I sat on my workbench, surrounded by tools that had helped me build things, fix things, create something from nothing. Now I needed them to help me tear something down. I watched the video again, forced myself to absorb every word, every laugh, every casual cruelty. This wasn't a mistake, a moment of weakness, a thing that just happened. This was calculated contempt, deliberate humiliation, a conscious choice to destroy me for sport while taking everything I provided. The Robert who'd walked up those stairs with roses and chicken marsala was dead. He'd died listening to his wife call him a neutered dog while another man agreed from his marriage bed. What sat in this garage now was something else. Someone who understood that 20 years of loyalty had bought him nothing but mockery. I sat in my garage, staring at the video evidence of my destroyed marriage. I realized something had fundamentally shifted inside me. The Robert who loved unconditionally was dead. What emerged was someone far more dangerous. Someone who understood that loyalty and mercy were weaknesses they'd exploited for the last time. I waited 3 weeks. 3 weeks of pretending I didn't know, of sleeping next to her while she texted him, of listening to her lies about working late. 3 weeks to prepare everything perfectly. The old Robert would have confronted them immediately, hot-headed and emotional. But I wasn't that man anymore. I knew their pattern now. Fridays were their day, had been for 8 months, apparently. Angela would claim a late meeting, Greg would tell his wife he was at the golf club, and they'd spend the evening in my bed, drinking my wine, laughing at my expense. This Friday would be different. I made my preparations methodically. Setup. 3 cameras in the bedroom. 1 in the smoke detector, 1 in the air vent, 1 behind the mirror. Retrieved my Glock from the safe, cleaned it, loaded it, not to use but to remind them that the neutered dog had teeth. Downloaded every text, every email, every credit card statement that showed their trail of deception. Backed everything up in 3 different places. Then I called in sick Friday morning, kissed Angela goodbye like nothing was wrong, and drove away. But I didn't go far. I waited at the coffee shop 2 blocks away, watching the clock, letting the anticipation build like pressure in a boiler. At 5:47 p.m., Greg's BMW pulled into my driveway. At 5:52, they were in my bedroom. At 6:15, when I knew they'd be deep in their routine, comfortable in their deception, I came home. I didn't slam the door, didn't storm up the stairs. I walked calmly, each step measured, my Glock heavy in my jacket pocket. The sounds from the bedroom were exactly what I expected. Breathy moans, rhythmic movement, the occasional laugh. My hand was perfectly steady. As I pushed open the door, the silence that followed was cathedral vast. Angela's eyes went wide, her mouth forming a perfect O of shock. Greg scrambled backward so fast he fell off the bed, his smooth confidence evaporating like morning dew. They both froze, naked and vulnerable, waiting for me to scream, to cry, to shoot. Instead, I pulled out my phone, set it on the dresser, and hit record. "Keep laughing," I said quietly. The silence stretched, unbearable. Angela clutched a sheet to her chest, as if modesty mattered now. "Robert, I can explain," she began desperately. "No need," I replied calmly. "I heard everything. 3 weeks ago. The neutered dog comment was particularly clever." I tossed the Glock onto the bed, not pointing it, not threatening, just letting it lie there between us like a statement of fact. Greg's eyes fixed on it, his face draining of color. "Robert, let's be rational here." He started nervously. I crossed the room in 2 strides and dragged him to his feet by his throat. 20 years of construction work had given me hands like vice grips and shoulders that could carry 100-pound bags of concrete. Greg might have had the corner office, but he had nothing for me here, naked and gasping. The first punch broke. His nose. The second loosened teeth. By the 5th, Angela was screaming, begging me to stop. I dropped him on the floor, where he curled into a ball, blood pooling on the hardwood I'd installed myself. "Everything is recorded," I told them calmly. "Every text, every email, every credit card receipt. The cameras in this room have been running for an hour. Your careers, your reputations, your comfortable lives, they're all in my hands now." Angela was sobbing, mascara running down her cheeks. "Please, Robert," she pleaded desperately. "I'm sorry, it was a mistake." 8 months isn't a mistake. It's a choice, I responded coldly. "And those things you said, about me being weak, pathetic, too boring to live with, those weren't mistakes either. Those were truths you were too cowardly to say to my face." I picked up the gas can I'd left in the hallway earlier that morning, hidden behind the linen closet door. Angela's sobs turned to shrieks as I began dousing the bedroom, our marital bed, her clothes, the carpet where Greg's blood was soaking in. The smell of gasoline filled the room, sharp and final. "You're insane!" Greg managed through his broken teeth. "No," I said, lighting a match. "I'm done." I gave them 30 seconds to run. Angela clutching a sheet, Greg stumbling naked and bloody. Before I dropped the match, the bedroom erupted in flames, 20 years of memories converting to smoke and ash. I walked downstairs, collected the bags I'd packed and stored in the garage that morning, and stepped out the front door as the fire spread through the second floor. The neighbors were already gathering, phones out, recording Angela and Greg's naked flight across the lawn. The sirens started in the distance, but I didn't run. I stood there watching my past burn, feeling something I hadn't experienced in years: freedom. As I walked away from the burning remains of my former life, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete freedom from the weight of caring what they thought of me. 6 months later, I'm sitting in an apartment that's half the size of the house I burned, but twice as peaceful. The insurance investigator blamed faulty wiring in the bedroom. Old house, amateur renovation work, these things happen. They cut me a check for $300,000. I kept my half, donated Angela's half to a women's shelter just for the irony. Angela tried to come back, of course. Showed up at my new place 3 months after the fire, claiming it was her first mistake, that she'd been confused, that we could work through this. I didn't argue. Just sent her the full video. Not just of that night, but the 12 minutes I'd recorded 3 weeks earlier, where she called me a neutered dog and laughed about my pathetic devotion. "Show this to your parents," I texted her. "Show them why." Their daughter's life fell apart. She never contacted me again. Greg's fall was more public. His wife received an anonymous package with everything: videos, emails, credit card records showing all those client lunches at hotels. She didn't just divorce him, she destroyed him, took him for everything in court, sent the evidence to his company's board of directors. Last I heard, he was selling insurance in Ohio, living in a studio apartment, his smooth charm worthless currency in a world that knew exactly what he was. The men from my crew still buy me beers sometimes, slapping my back and calling me a legend. They don't know the whole truth, but they know enough. That sometimes a man gets pushed too far, that sometimes the only way forward is to burn it all down and start fresh. I don't date, don't trust myself to know the difference between real affection and practiced deception. But I'm not bitter exactly. I'm just careful. I learned that love isn't enough if it only flows in one direction. That dignity matters more than harmony. That sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is stop trying to fix what someone else is determined to break. My new apartment is sparse but clean. No pictures on the walls, no memories in boxes. Just my tools, my work clothes, and a bed that's never been defiled by betrayal. Some nights I dream about Angela's laughter. Not the cruel kind from that last day, but the sweet sound from 20 years ago at the Safeway checkout. I wake up and remind myself that girl never really existed. She was just better at pretending, back then. The fire department ruled it accidental, but everyone knows. In a small town, everyone always knows. They look at me differently now, not with pity, but with something approaching respect. The man who didn't just take it. The man who made them pay. The man who kept his pride even if he lost everything else. I work the same construction sites, lay the same foundations, build the same dreams for other people. But now I know the truth about foundations. They're only as strong as what you build them on. Build on lies, and everything eventually collapses. Build on truth, even brutal truth. And at least you know where you stand. Some might call what I did revenge. Others might call it justice. I call it necessary. I kept my pride, and I made damn sure their laughter never echoed through my walls again. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.